Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our insider call today. My name is Steve Porcaro, and today Barry is on a well-deserved vacation. She will not be joining us, but she asked me to send everyone her regards. She's in, well, I wish I could say sunny Florida, but she's in Boston this week, and she's enjoying some time with some friends up there. So it will, excuse me, just be us on the phone today. I'll be taking your questions going forward, and we're going to open that up. And before I do, I'd like to take a moment, go over some housekeeping tips. We have the Q&A menu on the bottom of your screen. You can type that question in right there. Also, there's a chat box. I'm going to see if I can get that going here for a minute. Let's see if that works. All right, you can type a question in the chat. We'll keep an eye on that. Also, if you're calling in on the phone, I think we can unmute you to speak. We're not sure how you can let us know you want to speak, but I can take people off. Just let me know if you want to speak, and we'll take it from there. Also, again, if we get disconnected, feel free to call back in. Sometimes the technology kicks us off in the inclement weather, but we seem to be okay for the moment. If you have to jump off, no problem. This is being recorded. We'll put this out on LinkedIn. I'll send out the recording in a couple days. And I think that's it. The only thing I ask is if I unmute you, if you're in a loud area, please mute yourself temporarily while we're on the line to kind of cover some of the noise. All right, so before we jump in, last week, some of you know that we didn't have a phone call last week. What I wanted to do was, excuse me, my youngest son, who's 19, graduated from Marine Corps basic training, and my wife and I drove down. We're fortunate to go down with my other son, my middle son here, Kyle, who's stationed at Camp Lejeune, and see him graduate from the Marine Corps basic training. So right now, all three of my sons are serving in the Marines active duty. And as my wife said, a lot of testosterone in the house. And she always talked about being the scullery maid, picking up after all the men. And the joke was she never had it so well. We were like, she was the queen and we took care of her. So my son's home for the week. He's enjoying a little R&R before he heads down to Camp Geiger for some more training. But my boys are out there, and we talk about servant leadership. We'll talk about that coming up in the next few weeks, but I just want to let everyone know, thank you for your patience while we took a hiatus to go down and see my son graduate, and we're back in the action. So our topic for today, at least to kick this off, again, this is your call, medical device sales insider. I want to focus on your topics, but one of the things that I wanted to start off was career transition, job search, interview prep. Those questions come up all the time. And one of the things I wanted to do was kind of, again, I get some questions that are emailed to me throughout the week, and I want to answer a couple of those questions. And I want to answer your questions as well, regardless if it's career transition or business development or team development, whatever is more appropriate for you. But you're welcome, Mike. Mike sent me a quick note thanking family for our service. So thank you, appreciate it. So, all right, I'll tell you this joke since you're on the line. So some of you know I was in the military as a Navy corpsman. and I took care of a lot of Marines coming to the hospital. And the joke was, I was a scout master and the cub master for the boys in scouting. So as their father, scout master, and now their corpsman, it's like I always felt like I was taking care of them. But the joke was, it took 3 Marines to equal 1 of me. But that's just a dad joke, and those of you who are parents can appreciate that. So, all right. So moving on. So the interesting question I got last week while I was traveling was preparing for a job transition or breaking into medical device sales. And in the last couple weeks, we've talked about Stephen Covey, First Things First, and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I think there's a great segue here. And I don't remember what habit it is. It actually could have been the first one for First Things First, or the chapter, but start with the end in mind. And what do I mean by that? Many of the calls I get, I'll get calls, I'll talk with people, and they're asking about breaking in or transitioning into the medical device field, or if they're leaving one specialty and going to another, about how do I target? And, it's funny, like a lot of things in life, we have to know what our target is before we can hit it. So when we talk about picking the right specialty, the right company, the right manager, the right product, or the right service for you, you really have to start with the end in mind. And what I'm going to do is share the sheet later on. This is a sample from my my break into medical device class that I use, but I call it a job search marketing plan. And it's something that after you do your due diligence and you start thinking about pointing that ship or turning that cruise ship into the right direction, and you think about these oil tankers, right? When they make a turn, they have to start 2-3 miles out because they have to make a long arc. Sometimes it's like that when we're transitioning. Unlike the kayak, you can just turn on a dime. Some of these cruise ships, you have to turn a little bit more strategically, so to speak. So the job search marketing plan, and I think I'll throw it up on the screen. And I know some of you are on the phone, but I'll put a link in there and you can download the sample. The job search marketing plan is basically a worksheet that you work on while you're going through and doing your due diligence, right? You want to be able to come from a shotgun approach to a laser approach to narrow this down. I'll have a lot of people that will say, hey, Steve, here's my resume. If anything comes along in this part of the country, let me know. But that's very vague. It's really hard. It's like saying, keep an eye open for a restaurant. If I'm hungry, if you see a restaurant that serves food, what I suggest to people is that you put together this job search marketing plan, and it may be called different things by different people, but part of this is you really want to start with the end in mind. And why is this process helpful? When you're networking or you're asking people to keep their eyes open, I want to know where you're heading versus where you're coming from. And sharing a sheet like this will allow people, I'm going to see if I can zoom out here for a moment. All right. Something like this will allow you to focus in on what's a good fit for you. And why is that important? Well, the interesting thing is that if you're talking to someone who's not familiar with your background or the type of experience you have or the skill set you have or the geographic region, this gives them all the information they need in a summary. And it allows people, in a sense, you're training them to be your eyes and ears or your sales force. So I put this together as an example, but again, you can use this to start thinking about it. But for the person who sent the question is, you want to use this because when you start thinking about answering these questions, it helps guide you from your direction. And again, I do a lot of hiking, right? If I'm going north or uphill, I'm not going to go in the opposite direction. Sometimes that happens when we're looking at jobs. We get so excited because we're like, oh, somebody wants to talk to me. And then you start looking at it and it's a job or an opportunity, but it's 180 degrees from what you want. So if you can best articulate what you're looking for, it's very helpful to people that you're networking with. So right up front, here's the job objective. It could be a sales trainer job. I put this in here because I use myself as an example. It could be something that, all right, that, I guess that didn't help making it smaller. Types of functions, right? If you're in a sales job, it's pretty straightforward, but I want you to think about this because we've been talking about this for a while. For those of you who've been on the call, are you a hunter? Are you a farmer? Are you an account executive? Are you a capital equipment salesperson? Are you a consultative sales professional? Everywhere in between. Do you prefer commodity products? Do you want new technology? What's the one thing you want people to know about your sales style? Are you an independent person? Do you want to go out there breaking new territory? Or do you want to work in an established territory with established accounts? Whatever you can do to help people understand who you are and what you're looking to do is really what you want to be sharing with them. The other thing is if you have certain skill sets that you've learned, and again, I came from orthopedics, I did trauma, I did sports medicine, biologics, DME, I would put any type of information I can in there that would help my search be very granular and very focused. The other thing that's very important, depending on your location, how much of a geographic location. Connecticut's pretty small. I can say I can hit most of Connecticut within a 90-minute drive. I'm in the center of the state. But for some people, you may say, hey, anything up to 6 hours, or maybe I only want to focus north of Boston or south of Boston, depending on the territory. Maybe you just bought a house and you're having children and they're in school and your spouse has a job that you can't leave. You want to let people know that you're not willing to relocate. So a lot of this you've already thought about, but you just want to articulate it. The other thing is, if you're switching industries or specialties, you want to be able to share this and again, articulate it in writing what you're looking for. Again, think shotgun to a laser effect to help people know exactly what you're looking for. Excuse me. Size of organization. Now, we haven't really talked about it, but it does come up. A lot of people say, I want to work for a major medical manufacturer, right? One of the big name companies. But some of those larger companies may work through a distribution channel or a distributor. Think of an automobile dealer. You know, you can buy a Chevy or a Ford, but you have to go to your local dealer to buy that. Some of the medical device companies are in that process. Some of them sell through independent reps. Other times you'll work directly for the company. If you have a preference, you want to put this down on the document. Sometimes it's not an issue. You can work regardless, anyone you want to. The other thing is, if you're looking in other industries and you're asking, and I'll just use orthopedics as an example, what are the top 3 or 4 companies that you're looking at in orthopedic trauma, orthopedic sports medicine, arthroscopy, total joints, spine, hand? So what happens is you want to be able to help your network know what the companies are that you're looking at, or if you're looking at different segments of the medical device industry, what are the companies in those? And again, I'm using an example here. If I'm doing sales training and I'm working in different fields, I can basically cross connect. But the idea here is you want to make a one sheet summary instead of people going through your resume and trying to glean and pick this stuff off. It really helps people know who you are, where you're going, and along the way, it starts the conversation. I think in some ways helping people know how to best help you. Again, you may be your best lead for an opportunity may come from somebody who's not in that specific industry. So it's very interesting going forward. Yeah, Nate, Nate asked a question. When I send this out, there'll be a link here. You can download this PDF. This is a sample of the worksheet that we have, and you can use that. The idea is you want to spend some time going through, and again, as much as possible, what's a good fit based on what you know about yourself now, based on the type of sales that you're thinking of doing, if you're breaking in or if you're transitioning. If you're coming from something in the medical or healthcare related industry and you're just going to a different company, again, who's your competition? Or are you looking to work with a startup in a certain biotech? It's full of startups right now. So this is a good way to start the process. And I just wanted to get that out there before we open it up to any Q&A. All right, questions about this particular sheet. This is, again, and this is the job search marketing plan. You could probably do a search on Google. You can come up with a variation of this. But in some ways, I think this would be a great networking sheet for you if you're transitioning. And again, I'm answering the question, how do I share with people the company, my sales style, my goals, right, where I'm going. This is one way to do that based on what you know. And this may change. You may change and realize in your geographic location. And again, here's a perfect example. There are some medical specialties where it's very specialized. Medtronic, the pacemaker market, for instance, you're probably in a state or population of 3 million people. There's probably only a handful of people selling pacemakers from all the companies just because of how limited that product is, for instance. On the other hand, there are other products and services where the hospitals need much more of that, and you probably have more of a sales force. So as you get more information, you can modify this and share that going forward. All right, questions related to this or any other type of career transition, job search questions that you'd like to ask while we're here? I know it's funny without Barry. I feel naked. She's like my right-hand person, and without her being here, she's always ready to jump in and share something. And I feel like like I don't have anyone watching my back on this one. But I know she's here in spirit. All right, so Nate wanted to know, yes, my son's graduation went very well. All right, quick story. My two older boys graduated in June and August, and if you've been to South Carolina, the storms are pretty bad during the spring. So in June, my oldest son graduated. It was raining so bad. We did an inside ceremony, very impressive, but not as nice as being on the large parade deck and watching all the Marines march down. My son in August, we graduated outdoors in August, but it felt like it was 100 degrees out there in the weather in August. And then this is the wet time of year. So we were there in the rain on the bleachers, huddled under blankets and umbrellas. And just as the graduation started, the rain cleared and passed, and the Marines came out and marched. Very impressive. So it's pretty good. All right. Here's a couple questions. For changes in the current and future medical sales market environment, current job search strategies, independent versus a company, recent medical sales college graduate. Yeah, that's a good question, Mike. And I think when you're talking about the change, I think it's hard to pinpoint independent versus direct employer roles. The pendulum is swinging. Years ago, a lot of the larger companies wanted to have independent distributors selling their product. It was it was almost 2 layers less of management. And all they had to do was make the product, do the marketing, and they would they didn't have to worry about the sales, right? They passed it off. And then one of the couple things happened with healthcare 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when they started going through the whole cost containment, DRGs, savings. A lot of the larger companies said, we have more control when we have a direct sales force that reports to us, and we can manage them better, but our return on investment is better. So what do I mean by that? If you look at, and again, I'll use an automobile manufacturer. If you go to an automobile manufacturer and they sell high-end luxury cars, they probably only represent 1 or 2 brands. Because it's a high-end luxury car, they can make enough compensation where they can focus on 1 or 2 products. And then you'll look at, there are some dealerships, and there's a guy, I think Herb Chambers in New England, he owns a dealership in virtually every company, right? It's Chevy, Ford, Plymouth, Jeep, and you see all these cars with all these different products. So what happens is, if you're a small startup company and you only have a handful or maybe even 1 product, if you're going through a distributor model, it's hard sometimes for that salesperson to pull your product out of the bag when they have other products in their bag that they're competing for. So what happens is, again, the pendulum swung. If I'm a total joint company and I'm selling a product that's $5,000 to $7,000 per procedure, and again, the prices are changed, but you're representing a product $5,000 to $7,000 for a total joint, and your distributor says, hey, we have this new product that came on board. It's about a $250 sale. As a salesperson, you're over here thinking, do I spend my time on the high-end big ticket item, or am I going to spend my time on the smaller things? So there's a lot of things to factor in when you're looking at companies and direct sales force. I worked for a company, sports medicine. Arthrex was a great company. When they started, they were relatively small, had a handful of products. And then I was working for a distributor. We carried the surgical products, the soft tissue, as a distributor. We had 5 different product lines we carried, so we could go to that customer who is a sports medicine doctor and offer them tissue, bracing, DME, surgical implants, and various pain pumps. So what happened was, we had to go out there and have a handful of companies to have a full offering for that physician. Now, if you work for a larger company, and Arthrex has grown over time, and they were able to add new products where it filled out the plate. Right now, back in 2005, Arthrex went through a reorganization, and they were trying to get their distributors to carry as many of their products and get rid of the competitors' products that they were dealing with. So it worked out well. I mean, if you were a new distributor, you could be a one-stop shop for that company. But if you already had an organization relationship with other people, how many different products did you want to carry? So I think, Mike, it really depends on the specialty, the field, and the company you're looking at. But again, I know that's a very broad answer because it's a very tough question to answer, but we can certainly talk about it later. All right. So to Brian, when it's a value add to existing businesses, that a $250 product will be a benefit. If it's a new customer base, it's not time efficient. Correct. But what happens is, after a while, if you're working for a company, and this happens in a lot of industries, and here's a great example. Think about the cell phone companies. They have to come out with a new model cell phone on a regular basis to increase their market and to be that market leader. And there are some technologies and some products that, you know, at some point you can't really innovate, right? The technology has reached the limit. So they bring out additional things to serve their customers, to stay top of mind awareness and to be of value. So even though we may have had our main dish was one company's product, we had a lot of supplemental products because we wanted to get the appetizer, we wanted to get the side dish, we wanted to get the dessert or the snack, right? So when you went in there and you said, I can take care, doctor or the hospital, I could take care of your client from the beginning to the end, then you became that value-added person. On the other hand, you know, if you were working in a level 1 trauma center and you were doing a lot of fractures, a lot of joint replacement at a joint replacement or a spine center, you didn't really have time for the small things. You really needed to focus on your meat and potatoes. I think, Brian, that's what you're alluding to with that. I forgot you guys, he's typing. So, all right. So, thanks, Brian. So let's talk about, Mike wanted to know current job search strategies. So Mike, if you're coming from medical sales college, again, not knowing your specialty, I'm sure they shared the companies and kind of gave you a direction. If you went through the medical sales college, you probably focused on a specialty. They probably shared with you the top companies in that field. If you're on LinkedIn, it's a great way to start connecting and reaching out to people and getting their advice and counsel about the industry. Hearing about it in school is one thing. Talking to people in your geographic location for opportunities. Ideally, you want to be able to dig your well before you get thirsty. So as much as you're in the job market, you're also, there may not be any openings in a certain geographical territory for your particular specialty. So what's plan B? Do you work in an associated field? Do you start networking with, you know, instead of the 5 companies in that space, do you open it up to the top 10? Do you reach out to the company directly or to the distributors? You can talk to healthcare providers, again, through networking. So it really depends on what you're comfortable with, how much you've done in terms of planting seeds. Also, if you, and again, there are some companies that still do a lot of work with recruiters. Make sure the settings on your LinkedIn profile are set up so the recruiters will know that you're looking in that job market in that particular field. Again, if it's orthopedics, sports medicine, spine, total joints, whatever it is, make sure that's on your profile. But more importantly, the tough part is you really have to go out there. And I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. What's changed in the market now is that we have to be out there doing personal branding and marketing for ourselves in a job situation versus being proactive and waiting for people to do a search like they did in the past on your resume. Thing is, if they come across your profile and it doesn't resonate with them because they say, oh, well, he doesn't have enough experience, or he doesn't, you know, he's new to the field, when you're competing with 5 other people or 10 other people that have 5, 10, whatever years under their belt, you have to be more proactive and get in front of these people. So again, we can have that discussion offline just because of time. All right, thanks, Mike. So orthobiologics and regenerative medicine. So for you, again, there's only a few companies that are doing that, but it gives you a direction. So you may want to reach out to people in your area and start connecting with them. And again, if they're in the group, get their advice and counsel about the state of the industry. And also, don't be afraid to share information in that space to where the people are. And what I mean by that is, if you want to be seen as an asset to a company, and this is a tough one, there are times when the hiring managers are on LinkedIn and social media, but 9 times out of 10, they're busy working, right? Like a lot of people during the day, we have a job. So how do you get in front of people? The nice thing is there's nothing preventing you from going to going to cafeterias and hospitals, having coffee with people and meeting them for coffee. You can go, if you live near a major metropolitan area, are there trade shows, associations, are there meetings, are there state meetings? Go to some of the shows, try to meet people in person. So you can do a lot of things. You can share information online so people know that you understand the industry and what's happening, but you can also attend some of those events. The other thing is, and like I said, it's funny, there aren't a lot of medical device sales professionals in your local community. That's one of the reasons why I started the LinkedIn groups at the time, because I couldn't connect with anybody. Where I live, it's a small town in the greater Hartford area. But the funny thing is, when you talk to people and say, I'm in the medical device industry, all of a sudden, a friend of my son's, his mother says, oh yeah, my husband sells that equipment too. And you're like, oh really? So you start talking. It was a medical device, but it was, I think, in urology. And so there are people out there, and I think we have to take the blinders off and figure out how to get in front of some of those people. Again, eyes and ears, and that's what you're trying to do with relationship building. All right, other questions? Anyone want to talk? And we have somebody on the phone. They can't type, but they can listen. Other questions? All right, well, let me ask you this. How's everybody doing with their interview questions? Is everyone prepared to answer their interview questions? And the reason why I ask is, the interesting thing with interview questions, everyone prepares and they have the answers. And if you can, start practicing your interview questions. And Mike, I'm going to pick on you only because you recently volunteered your information as a recent medical sales graduate. Did you get a chance, Mike, to do any role playing with your interview questions? Did they do? At one point they did, and I haven't really been up on what they've been doing lately. But okay, so ideally, if you can, this whole thing, and anyone who's transitioning, whether you're selling a product now or you're selling yourself, it's all about having your story come together, right? You want to be able to take the different elements of your story and weave a tale out of that people can understand. Listen where you're coming from, where you are today, but more importantly, where you want to be tomorrow. When you take that story and share that, you want the words to fall out of your mouth. You want to be able to look somebody in the eyes with confidence and credibility and really share with them why you're a good fit for this job, or why your product will solve their problem, why you have the solution. And sometimes it's hard for people when they're just transitioning because they're really not sure yet of why they can work in that company or why they can represent that product. So part of this is you have to take your experience, your background, your training, your successes, and weave them into this great story of why you're a good fit for that team. One of the things, and this is where the recruiters and hiring managers, what they have to do is they need some type of way to vet, right? What's the minimum qualifications? What's the minimum experience? What's the minimum that I'm starting with? Because everyone who comes to these people say, just get me in front of them. I can close on that. I can get the job. I know I can help them. Well, the reality is, if you don't have a certain amount of sales experience, and it happens, if you're new to the medical device or healthcare industry, it's a little bit of an uphill challenge. Not that it can't be done, but sometimes we don't know what's going on with that company, with that manager, with his team. He may have 5 new people out of 10, and he's thinking the last thing I need to do is mentor, coach, and guide another person. Or he says, I need somebody who has some experience under their belt, because I have some tough customers and they've beaten up on the last 2 or 3 salespeople in that role. And I need someone who can handle, XYZ going on. So part of this whole process is understanding what these people are looking for, not just a sales role. Other than the salesmanship and the ability to sell a product or a service, what else are they looking for? Maybe they need someone who doesn't need their hand held. Maybe they need someone to be a team player and step up. Maybe they need somebody who has some experience mentoring and guiding and coaching, or again, selling in competitive situations. The tough part here is, it's really hard. Again, I'm going to reiterate this. It's become one of my go-to phrases. It's really hard to hit that target or that goal if we don't know what it is. And sometimes, and this was a great saying I picked up in the operating room, when you have a mallet, everything looks like a nail, right? Or a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And sometimes people and companies, solutions, we're taught that we only have the best solution. And when we look at things through a certain perspective, we have to be careful that we're seeing the other side of that equation. On one hand, yes, you want to be passionate about your abilities and your approach to solving problems and your ability to solve a problem. On the other hand, if people don't think it's a good fit, we can't take it personally. It's not a judgment against you. If you don't have the experience, and it does happen, there are some people that say, or companies, recruiters saying, we need somebody with 5 years experience or 10 years experience, but we don't. And then somebody with 10 years experiences apply for the job, and they're like, well, we don't want somebody, we want somebody who's new to the market. We don't want a veteran salesperson. Well, you can't have 10 years experience with only 5 years in the workforce. So you're going to hear all these crazy things that go on there. And yeah, it's crazy. All right, Nate has another question, and then we'll wrap it up in a moment. All right, so a medical device distribution company. Right now, there's nothing preventing you from printing up a card and saying, Nate, my name's Nate, and I sell medical supplies. You can go out, and there are companies all over the world. I get emails from companies in China, Israel, Canada, Mexico. They're looking for salespeople, independent salespeople, to represent their product. And you can be an independent medical distributor, or you can go online and find a company that's a medical distributor. And I'll use orthopedics because that's where I'm familiar with. A lot of the major companies, if you go to their website, contact website, they will tell you that, hey, our products are represented in the following states by these people, right? They'll have basically a state map, and they'll have company websites where the distributors have their own website. You can do a search for medical distributors. online, and you can find people who carry certain products. So the medical distribution company is basically a sales organization that works for the manufacturer. They may either represent one company or multiple companies. Again, sports medicine, I'm going to go in there with my main course product and then all my associate products to go there. But this is the part where you want to pick a specialty and do some research and find out, because you could have two major companies in the space. One has a direct sales force and the other have a distributor. It's not better or worse. It's different. I've been fortunate where I've been an independent consultant. I've worked for a distributor, and I've worked for a major medical company as an employee. Not better or worse, just different. But I think it's more important that you think about what type of product or service that you're a good fit for, and who do you want to sell for, and then you can figure out who the contact is. Does that make sense, Nate? Because I think it doesn't matter if it's a distributor. If it's not a good fit for you and it's something you don't want to carry, it doesn't make sense for you logging in and trying to get to them. All right. All right. You're welcome, Nate. All right. Any other question before we wrap that up? Thank you for, again, being on the call. It seems like time is flying by. I'm looking forward to March because spring is right around the corner. All right. Well, again, thank you for joining us. If you want to have a quick conversation offline, send me a note. I can certainly answer some of these questions in more detail with a little bit more information if that would be helpful. Also, as a reminder, I had to move my master class, Breaking into Medical Device Sales, to March 23rd. If you know of anyone who's looking to break in and they want a little help, this is a combination group coaching and masterclass experience. I'll send the link out, but you may do me a favor, bump into people and pass that along. In the meantime, if I can be of any assistance, please drop me a line. Have a great week. I'll see you then. Bye-bye, everyone.